Shall we get started? Very good. Good afternoon, everybody. I am so delighted to introduce to you our speaker, and I want to welcome you all for coming to support our event in such a beautiful space. The art that you see in the space is done by faculty at Dutchess Community College. So for those of you who are looking to take some art classes, registration opens on Monday. So have a look at the art on the walls, look at the names of the artists. One of the artists is here, Dana Doherty, who's also the art gallery director. So I'm going to say a couple of words about our speaker, and then I'm going to invite Mehmet to talk for a little bit about the other events that are happening this month, organized by the Hispanic Heritage Committee. Janis Astor del Valle is an award-winning writer, performer, and filmmaker whose work promotes discourse and fosters understanding of LGBT issues and cultural diversity. She is a member of the Actors Studio's Playwright Director Workshop and has served as an assistant professor in the practice of arts management and entrepreneurship at SUNY Purchase since 2013. This event is organized by the Process to Text reading series sponsored by the English department in collaboration with the Hispanic Heritage Committee. And this is where Mehmet is going to come in and tell us about the classes he's teaching next semester that you want to sign up for. No, he's going to talk about the events happening later this month.
Thank you. Very excited to have Janis Astor del Valle here with us today. This is our penultimate event for Hispanic Heritage Month. Next week we have one more with Claudia Valentina Montes, singer, songwriter, has a band. She's going to be performing. She's going to be playing boleros, rancheros, son jarocho, here cumbia next week. In the Washington Circle, starting at 12:30 to 1:45, October 26th. So please, it'll be a lot of fun, good music, very talented, beautiful singer, and weather permitting, of course. If not, it will be in the cafeteria at that time. Okay. So hope to see everyone there. And without further ado, Janis, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure, because it just occurred to me, I should shut my phone off. The ringer might, don't want that to go off. So thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you to Mehmet and Lucia for inviting me, and also Chanel Espaillat, who I understand first referred me to Mehmet. So my work, my experience has mostly been in theater. It's my first love. And so I've been writing for, gosh, how many years? I feel like I've been writing all my life. But writing plays, I really started to do in my 20s when I was living in New York City, and trying to be a working actress. And we all know, that's a really tough road, very difficult and challenging to earn a living solely through acting. And my mother always said, Janis, fall back on your writing. Don't forget about your writing. And she couldn't have been more right. So I did start to write plays as a way to give myself work and my friends work, because back in those days, and I'm going to date myself here, but I don't care. I just turned 60 and I'm proud of it. But back in the days when I graduated college, it was the late 80s, and there were not really many roles for Latinas. And then I was also coming out as a lesbian, not many roles for lesbians that weren't stereotypical. So I should clarify that. Yeah, the roles that were out there in theater and film were very stereotypical, and I felt degrading to women, to Latinas, to Latinos, to people of color, to the gay community, the LGBTQ community, in fact. And, you know, here we are nearly 40 years later, I still feel like there's not enough. We've made some strides, but I still feel like there's not enough representation in all of those aforementioned communities. We still have a way to go on stage and on screen. Anyway, I tried to do my part. and so that's why I became a playwright, was to provide work for my friends and myself. But over the years, I found that really I love writing. It was something I did as a child. And I started in the 1990s then, something that was a popular format in theater at that time was the solo play, the one-person play. And I got very interested in exploring my personal struggles with coming out as a Latina, coming out as a lesbian, and I found that a solo play was a really great way to express everything I wanted to say about those struggles. So the result was this play that I'm going to read to you from. I'm just going to read excerpts from it, and it doesn't follow a linear pattern. It's more of a memory play. It's called Transplantations. And the original title was Transplantations, Straight and Other Jackets para mí. The reason is I tried to use the metaphor of a straitjacket to explain how I felt trapped, not by my own identity, but by the identities that society was projecting on me, the gender roles, the expectations that people had of me. And it felt at times that I was literally, I would find myself just kind of doing this a lot. And I was like, coño, that feels like I'm, you know, excuse my language, it feels like I'm in a straitjacket. And so, as a matter of fact, the first time I produced this play, the first time, and then every time after that, pretty much, I performed the play in a straitjacket. I actually bought a real straitjacket and explored, you know, what that feels like with my director, and so this play was kind of experimental in that way too, because I don't know of any other people who were performing plays in straitjackets at that time. But anyway, it was a weird feeling, but it was also, in an odd way, very liberating for me, because I got to explore the physical, cultural, societal, emotional, psychological constraints that straitjacket represented. And it was a really neat experience ultimately. Anyway, all right, without further ado, I'm going to read excerpts to you. And I should also tell you that this play has evolved since I first wrote and published it in 1993. Gosh, that's like 30 years ago. And at that time, I was being guided and directed by a wonderful mentor who unfortunately is no longer with us, the wonderful Cuban-American playwright, or Cuban playwright, Dolores Prida. Phenomenal woman and mentor, and she taught me so much about life and love and theater. And she kept telling me, Janis, this play you have to let it breathe, you have to let it evolve. And with you, as you evolve as a Latina, as an artist, you have to let the play breathe and evolve. And I was like, what are you saying? She's like, you have to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. The key to writing is rewriting. That's what she kept telling me. And she was right, because over the years, over these past 3 decades, I have rewritten the play a million times, but that's because it reflects my journey as a woman, as an artist, as a Latina, all the things she said. And so I, you know, from time to time, I edit, I take things out, and then I put new things in. So what you're hearing today is actually the first time anybody's heard the new amalgamation of this. This represents some new material that you can't find in the places where this has been published. Okay, here we go, Transplantations. And so imagine me, if you will, if I were performing this in a theater, I'm crouched on the floor in a fetal position in a straitjacket. And actually, my last director, Carolyn Kirsch, another wonderful mentor, directed me so that I would be lying on the floor for 30 minutes before the play started. So while the audience was coming in, yeah, I know, that's a long time, right? But she wanted me to feel that feeling of being trapped. It was almost like being a specimen under a microscope. as the audience filled, and then it actually was a great conversation opener for people who came to see the show, because they're like, oh my God, what was it like? And it was good for them to explore their reactions to seeing this woman on the floor in a straitjacket, right? I thought it was a brilliant point of direction. Anyway, I know, no straitjacket today, just me. Okay, here we go. Lost, lost, lost. Sleepwalking, talking in my sleep, dreaming of flan so thick and sweet, coconut, vanilla, caramel, my lips massaging my taste buds, lingering in my mouth like a warm summer night in old San Juan, a live band playing Latin jazz, and we're swaying on the cobblestone. An impromptu dance. Joyous, you take me into your arms and dazzle me with your kiss. Taste the flan still lingering in my mouth, the custard, coconut, vanilla, caramel cascading my lips. Ah. But I am awake. We are in the too cool winter of Connecticut, and the caramel is drool. So, I close my eyes to dream again of you. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I am so tired. I don't remember the exact moment I got in. It's all a blur. One moment, I was chopping sofrito for my girlfriend's omelet. One moment, I was loving her. One moment, I was loving myself. And the next, I was out. I was out, but not really out. I mean, I was out like a light on the deconstructed Bruckner Expressway. Childhood was hanging on catchphrases like a fish out of water. No digo yo, poca vergüenza, par carajo, coño, ¿estás borracho? Mommy and papi start speaking perfect English when they think I'm listening. But I want to hear more catchphrases thrown around our New England house like my brother's handball, on our old schoolyard wall to wall, PS 93, oh say, can you see me? Here, beneath the corn stalks. I'm trying to get off this farm, but these weeds are too high. We used to live in the Bronx, in a high rise, 5th floor, 5A, 955 Evergreen, Story Ave. We had a terrace, and I could wave to Maria, Joaquin, Eddie D. I used to see my people from miles. Oye, can you hear me? I'm coming down. Can't see nothing now but land and noisy, quiet. Ain't no stickball, no amarillos, no coquito, no rice and beans. Only in my mommy's kitchen once a week. 'Cause IGA don't have no Spanish food, Mommy says. We have to stock up on a monthly trip to the Bronx, to my tita's kitchen, to my Puerto Rican dreams. 1970, I was in the middle of 2nd grade when we left the Bronx. Population infinity. We moved to New Milford, Connecticut. Population 5. Suddenly, we were the only Puerto Ricans for miles. That TV news magazine, 2020, I don't know if you heard of it, voted it the typical New England town back in the 80s. Poor little New Milford, my mother would sing from time to time. And I never could understand what she found so poor about a town that was run by bankers and clergymen. Poor little New Milford, she would almost chant while washing dishes or shoveling a path through 6-foot snowdrifts. 3 days after moving to Connecticut, Mommy planned our first trip back to the Bronx, to Co-op City, my titos. That's what we call my grandfather, Mommy's father. It was New Year's Eve and Tito's birthday. Mommy had made a huge pot of arroz con gandules, his favorite. We had 2 blizzards in as many days, totaling 5.5 feet, plus drifts. Todavía, Mommy was determined we were going to New York come hell or high water. Mommy dispatched the troops to clear out the snow. She and my father on the driveway, me and my brother Jeff on the car. But instead of a driveway, Mommy and Papi uncovered a 100-foot sheet of ice. That shit was hard as a motherfucking rock. And Mommy wasn't singing Poor Little New Milford this time. In fact, she wasn't singing punto. She was only chopping away at that ice as if it were a garden of wayward garlic. Boy, could that woman chop ice. Almost as fast as she chops sofrito. 37 minutes later, we were all ready to pile into our 62 Rambler. Except Papi, who was carefully descending the outside stairs, carrying like a holy grail the gigantic glass bowl of arroz con gandules. Suddenly, he slips, he slides, a thunderous thump, a thud of flesh against wrought iron and concrete, and the whir of the arroz con gandules zooming from my father's hands like a flying saucer, crashing and cracking into a heap of papi, arroz, gandules, and glass on ice. My father lay dazed at the foot of the stairs. And the first words out of Mommy's mouth were, "Ay, Dios mío, my gandules!" No amarillos, no coquito, no rice and beans, only in my mommy's kitchen once a week. No matter how often we visited New York, it was always a day too short. I missed the Bronx and my brother Linky, who stayed behind. Akwe, he was 19. He had a good job with a swanky bank in Manhattan. I was 7 and had no voice, no choice, and no idea how I really missed my native New York. How much. It was a slow kind of missing. I stayed con la gana, with the yearning. It's the kind of missing that never dies. Not even the act of forgetting can kill it, because you can forget a memory, but not a feeling, not a sense, not a smell. See, in New York, we didn't go to church on Sunday. We went to Yankee Stadium and Orchard Beach. A day at Orchard Beach was a day in heaven. The juicy scents of Mommy's pollo frito and Coppertone lotion, the majestic sounds of 1,000 portable radios blasting Tito Puente. My Uncle Raymond taking me to the Bronx Zoo or White Castles, or just hanging out and turning me on to the latest Jackson 5 hit. Tu sabe, the kids in Connecticut, they didn't know who Michael Jackson was back then. They were into that white bread Mormon group from Utah, the Osmonds. I've never thought of my family as middle class, although to our old friends from the Bronx, moving to Connecticut meant we had made it. What I want to know is, what exactly did we make? And where did we make it to? We may have made it out of the Bronx, but we were still working class. I mean, in Connecticut, we still didn't have a garage or a dishwasher. Middle class. The kids I went to school with complained that they were only middle class. Coño, to me, having a 2-car garage, 2-story house, 2 acres of land, and 3 closets of LL Bean was filthy rich. They made me think we were poverty-stricken. And so now, let me just stop here for a minute and just see if there's any questions or anything that's not clear so far. Anybody here from the Bronx? No?
I'm from Queens.
You're from Queens, okay.
By the bridge that crosses.
Okay, so, all right, yeah?
Yeah, we moved from the Bronx.
Okay, cool. Anybody else here from New York City? Yeah?
I used to,
Manhattan, okay, yeah.
I used to live in Astoria.
Ah.
Teach one morning.
Okay, yeah, all right, cool. So one thing I also forgot to say about this play is it explores The reason it's called Transplantations, well, I'll let you think about that title, and maybe you could tell me what you think after you hear some more from it. Maybe you can tell me why I titled it. But one of the recurring themes in this play is dealing with the culture shock I experienced as a little Puerto Rican kid growing up in this, really diverse neighborhood in the Bronx, the Soundview section of the Bronx. And then at the age of 7, I felt like transplanted to this really small town, New Milford, Connecticut, which in those days, the exact year was 1970, and it was really kind of rural back then. It's gotten developed now, but even though it's become developed, it's still not very diverse ethnically or racially. So it's still a predominantly white community. And I just had a hard time there as a kid, growing up, dealing with those issues. So that's a recurring theme in this play, along with then dealing with my struggle to come out as a young lesbian. All right, so let me go back now. This is a part of the play in which I kind of played two characters, myself as like a 5-year-old kid and my mother. Okay. I'll try it. It's so hard for me to do my mother's voice because she had a very distinct voice. She was very Puerto Rican, but very Bronx. And I can't quite capture her Bronx. Yeah, I'm going to try. Okay. Mija, Linky gave me $5 to spend for your birthday. That's $1 for every year. He said, Mommy, take her to Corvette's and buy her anything she wants. Anything. So now, mija, pick out whatever you want. I headed straight for the toy section. But just when my happy little hands reached out, Mommy stepped in. Mija, estos son boys' toys. I looked from my beloved prize and back to Mommy's nervous eyes. Mira, hay Barbie allí. But in those days, my fingers still had a mind and a heart of their own, so they clutched the beautiful bag of cowboys and wouldn't let go. Are you sure? I hugged the toy men closer to my chest. Now I could play soldiers with my other brother. I'm sure, Mommy, I'm ready to go home. Ay, mija. Word spreads like a California wildfire in my family, courtesy of my titis. Within 2 hours, I had a reputation. Edie, don't buy her a doll for Christmas unless it's G.I. Joe. The mother says she's playing con boys' toys, tú sabes. Ay, no, que pobrecita la mamá. María Magdalena me dijo. Ay, bendito, ¿qué pasó? She was such a beautiful little girl. Yo sé, and the way she always had her dress to the nines. Pero tú sabes, she has too many sons que her little girl don't know how to be a little girl. Sí, Cristina, telling you, Edie me dijo. She won't even look at a dress. Goes into a tantrum every time the mother shows her a skirt. Sí, the mother's in tears. He only plays con boys' toys, tú sabes. But if she and my daughter, I'd have slapped the shit out of her. I don't know where they got their information about the dresses. I didn't stop wearing those till I was at least 10 or 11. As for the doll situation, I couldn't. Walking around with a doll, pretending it's your baby, feeding it, burping it, changing it. I mean, where's the entertainment value in that? Now, Action Jackson and Big Jim, they were fun. Do you remember Big Jim with the button you press in his back to make him do karate chops? That was exciting. Or how about Evel Knievel with his battery-operated motorcycle, popping wheelies, jumping ramps? I used to love building ramps just to see how high he could go before he fell off the bike. Yeah, those were dolls I could get into. I thought Mommy took it in stride, but I caught her crying. So I began collecting Malibu Barbie and Skipper, too. With their tans, they could almost pass for Puerto Rican. They went camping with the guys, and they would all climb mountains. But since Malibu Barbie and Skipper only had their bathing suits, I let them wear G.I. Joe's clothes. Hey, you can't climb mountains in bikinis. Jeanette de Patria, Italiana. A year older than me and born in the Bronx too. They'd moved to Connecticut before us, so she'd already lost her accent. I didn't even know I had an accent until Jeanette and her brother Joey kept laughing at me every time I said words like orange soda, Florida, and banana. After several weeks of their intense drilling, I learned to say orange soda, Florida, banana, in other words, just like them. Mommy and Papi speak perfect English when they think I'm listening. The little Spanish I knew, I didn't know what to do with. It's not that it wasn't allowed in our house, it just wasn't encouraged. So, in 7th grade, I took Spanish, bringing in all the catchphrases that I had picked up at home. But I didn't realize there's a big difference between Castilian and Puerto Rican Spanish. So, I flunked the first couple of vocab tests, mostly because I couldn't spell. And I kept arguing with my teacher about the existence of non-existent words like perate, a mi miro pau pau, and coño carajo. I hated school. They didn't teach Angela Davis, Sonia Sanchez, Audre Lorde, Maria Irene Fornes, Sherry Moraga, Gloria Anzaldúa, or Alice Walker in my Connecticut public high school. We were lucky to get enough a taste of Lorraine Hansberry and Lillian Hellman. And they didn't teach me what to do with my Latina lesbian hands holding an American pen at that New England school. 1979, and I had cried myself to sleep at least 185 nights that sophomore year, never knowing why. No amarillos, no coquito, no rice and beans. Only in my mommy's kitchen once a week. So I wrote with a secret pen, closet writer, closet case, closet Puerto Rican, and hated Monday mornings, and dated boys, and loved girls, but only in my journal. And learning how to paint my straight girl face was as easy as learning how to paint the Sistine Chapel without a palette. I dated boys. I loved girls, but only in my journal. 1980, and I, half waiting for Mr. Right, wondered what it would be like to salsa with Elena or Kate instead of Jose or Biff. Junior prom came and went without me. I was home alone in my closet, the sweet refuge of Papi's hand-me-down boxers and pajamas, writing and dreaming of Elena and Kate and Marisol and Grace. I dreamed I was their date. Merengue, cha-cha, salsa, hustle, bump and grind, lips to lips, breast to breast, eye to eye. I didn't really know how to dance. But in my mind, in my closet, in my spaghetti straps, in my mind, I wore stiletto heels. It was so fly, I didn't even feel the sting of the wasps. In my mind, I did not hide. The idea of queen and queen of the prom stayed with me the rest of the year. 1981, graduation's here, and who gives a flying fuck when they're force-feeding us? Reagan. I stopped dating boys that June. 1982, and I fell in love with you and gave birth to the secret thoughts that until then had resigned themselves to the permanent residence inside my head. Yet, Mommy said it was a sin. So, I started dating boys again. 4 years, 12 flings, 2 boyfriends, and 1 lesbian experience later, I escaped to New York. At 22, I still had la gana for New York. So I uprooted myself from Connecticut to blossom in Manhattan's Upper East Side. The Upper East Side? What the fuck was I looking for there? The only Puerto Ricans were nannies and doormen. There were no lesbians and no Goya rice and beans at the food emporium. Coño, you couldn't even get plátanos for at least 30 blocks. So I fled to Brooklyn. In Carroll Gardens, I found the flower of my dreams, Maya. She was the first Puerto Rican Dominican I had ever met. She reminded me of that 70s country music star, Crystal Gale, who had the most long, gorgeous hair all the way down to her feet. A year later, I still hadn't found my roots. So I moved from Brooklyn to Chelsea to Staten Island and ended up in Hoboken, New Jersey. Funny thing was, though, I found a lot of Latinos, only I couldn't speak to them. All is not fair in food and beverage, you tell me, as one of your coworkers, one of my Latino brothers, repeatedly stabs you with the butcher knife of ignorance. I heard a dirty rumor. I heard a dirty rumor. I heard you don't like men, he jabs. Is it true? Is it true? You into women? The taunting tone demands. Somebody saw us kiss last Friday morning when I dropped you off at work. Somebody saw us kiss. When I dropped, your heart plops to the chopping block. The knife twists, prime cut, roast rump. He craves to slice it up. Your mouth is raw with anger and fear. I'll fuck anything that walks, is all you can retort. He turns on his meat grinder and blender simultaneously. Why are you like that? Why you like that? Why you? He asks incredulously. Licking his lips, his eyes affixed on your breasts, he secretly desires to puree, strain, and taste test. But other customers await. Your coworker zips up his machismo and walks away. This time, at home, alone, you cry first all the words you could not say to him, then pick up the phone and dial me. In a calmer state of mind, a sign of the times, you surmise, it all comes down to pride. If they can't control or fuck you, they don't want to deal. But your next breath remembers the fear. Maybe I should just get married and have kids. My heart momentarily plops to the chopping block, then springs back into place. It is 1993, marriage equality just a dream. You could marry me and have kids, I boldly state. Really? Yeah, really. But some homophobe saw us kiss last Friday morning. So I'll drop you off at the corner and kiss you at home. Voices in the night or day. My own people saying, you're so white, or you're so straight. Gringa blanquita, la niña bonita, they tuck me in under a blanket of insecurity. A Puerto Rican sister pushing timeshares, condos on this Isla Verde beach as fast and slow as dope. My sister, lighter than me, has the huevos to speak. You must have some of that pure European blood in you, like me. I'm not like you, I think. I think who would want more of her so-called pure European blood that contaminated history with transfusions of imperialism? Conquistadores, conquerors conquering, raped a people, a land, and a culture. I think. So disarmed by my thoughts and fear, how can I let the words out? Nenita, tenemos todos en mi familia. We have every color of the rainbow and more in my family, honey, I suddenly shout. I am a Puerto Rican lesbian. I think. But I'm tired. So tired of having to defend my light skin, my Anglo-looking face, my New England education, my accentless accent, my Spanglish-laden Spanish, my long straight hair, and my flat ass, to voices in the night or day, my own people, and you, tired. I'm going to break there and, yeah, just break there and see if there's any, I know I just threw a lot at you, questions, comments, concerns.
I have a question. When you
Yeah.
when you presented this in the theater and you were in a straitjacket, how did the audience respond to that?
They were freaked out. Yeah. Every time well, the first time I did it, this is going back 30 years, I think we were exploring, the idea of me staying in a straitjacket. And then, and I've had different directors over the years, but with, even with Dolores, I think she said, no, Janis, it's too much for you to be in a straitjacket the whole time. Because the show runs about an hour long and sometimes a little longer, 70 minutes, depending on if I can't get out of the straitjacket, which has happened. But so we started working. And so every director I've had over the years, we've found different places where it feels natural to kind of take it off as part of the dialogue or part of the monologue, really. So yeah, but I tell you, what is it like for me? It's freaking scary. And the first time I got trapped in it, there was no stage manager to help me. So I just had to kind of figure out how to do it. And I couldn't get out of it until the very end. I really did most of the play in the straitjacket. And I gotta just.
It's interesting that
Yeah.
that maybe when you're presenting it and then you take off the straitjacket, the moments when you're talking about all these issues, the moment you're acknowledging aspects of your identity, right? And you're taking your straitjacket off, it can be a powerful symbol
Yeah.
of empowerment in that sense. And
Yeah.
you're confronting those tensions.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of working with all the directors I've worked with. They've been really phenomenal. Everybody from Dolores Prida to Francisco Cali and Carolyn Kirsch, Michael Garces, they've all directed me in a way that, where they've blocked me on the set to kind of explore what does that feel like when you shed that straitjacket, but then what are the other things that are still confining you, and some of it is, what society projects on you, but some of it is also what I project on myself. So the internal conflict that I have. Yeah.
I'm wondering where you debuted your show, just because we're about the same generation. I was in New York those years.
Yeah.
And another friend who's teaching at New Paltz named Layla Modir is from that era in New York.
Okay.
Theater.
Well, the very first place I did it in 1993 was at the Lesbian and Gay Community Center on 13th Street, 208 West 13th Street, I think it is. It was part of an event hosted by Crystal Quilt. I think it was Crystal Quilt. Do you know Linda Marks? No, okay, Linda Marks, Crystal. Yeah, and then when it became, and that was actually the first, it was more like a reading where I was really kind of just exploring it, and there was a wonderful audience, but they were really freaked out by the straitjacket, and I had to take it off like almost immediately because people were like, it triggered a lot of things. So shed that immediately, but where I really premiered it as a theatrical piece directed by Dolores Prida was the New York Poets Cafe.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's right.
and that wasn't until 1996.
Okay.
And then over the years, I've just performed at different places, colleges, and and it's just whoever would have me. It's that kind of thing. It travels well because it's just me and a couple of props.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do you feel like the straitjacket gives you a different type of emotion because you feel a bit more trapped?
Yeah, that's a great question. It sure does. I actually, especially the way Carolyn, my last director, directed me, lying on the floor for a half hour, it creates this real feeling of entrapment, and lying for those 30 minutes, I'm forced to just think to myself and try to calm myself down, but then also just kind of, think about what it represents and how can I bust out of it, But the way she directed me, I didn't just bust out of it like Wonder Woman, it was like a really kind of slow, really cool way of slipping one arm out at a time, and just having one arm free for a while, walking around stage, you know, where this part of my body is trapped, but the one arm is, you know, and then just kind of, and while I'm saying my lines, and then just kind of getting the other arm out, but maybe it's still, you know, halfway down. At one point I tangled with it, you know, wore it as a cape, wore it as a belt, you know, and it's really cool to explore those things because, yeah, it brings up all these different emotions, but it's ultimately liberating when I get it off. Having it on, I feel the pain of cultural confinement, of, you know, of my cultural identity being, you know, trapped. My whole identity, not just cultural identity, my whole identity, all my multiple identities. Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about your experience speaking different languages and using different languages in the text? So you mentioned you went to school, but then you were judged because Spanish was a Spanish.
Yeah, and then it's funny. I was judged by my own family too, because then, you know, when so after I had been living in New York, or living in Connecticut for a while, then I developed this Connecticut, you know, twang, as I call it. And when I went back to the Bronx, because we went to visit our family a lot, my abuelos were still there, and there was one uncle in particular, I won't name him, but I'll just, you know, he used to tease me about the way I spoke English, you know, that he said I sounded like a Connecticut Yankee, because I had lost my Bronx accent, you know. And then, and I write about this too in, later in the play. There's a whole poem I wrote that was inspired by something one of my nieces said to me, because she's Puerto Rican Dominican, and she was experiencing some similar struggles with her identity. And she said, Titi, I'm too Spanish for the white kids, and I'm too white for the Spanish kids. And that has been a recurring theme all my life, and it happened with language. So I never felt like I spoke Spanish well enough. I still, you know, use Duolingo to practice, you know, sometimes. And my wife is learning Spanish now too. She's African American, but she has a real love and appreciation of my culture, and so she's trying to learn Spanish. So we try to speak, you know, to each other now and use our skills. But yeah, growing up, my parents were really selective about what they taught us in terms of our culture and language. Unfortunately, they didn't understand the value of being bilingual and the importance of holding on to the language part of your culture, you know. I think it's also because, and I don't blame them anymore. I think as a kid I blamed them. Why do I have to take Spanish in school? Why can't you just teach me? I understand now more because they're from a different generation. They were really forced to assimilate in such a way. When you think about it, you know, my dad was born in 1928, my mother in 1931. All my grandparents had come here from Puerto Rico right before the Depression. My parents were born in New York, and there was such pressure on immigrants of that time, as there is now. Really, nothing much has changed if you think about it. There's such pressure to assimilate into American culture. And you know, we're forced to leave behind our primary culture, and that's not right. We should be able to, you know, I have no qualms about, yes, we should learn to speak English if we're living in an English-speaking country, but that doesn't mean we have to lose our Spanish. It doesn't mean we have to lose our Puerto Rican culture. We should be able to embrace it all. You know, it makes us a richer country. It makes us a richer human race. But my parents weren't taught that. They were, you know, I have one of my cousins tells this painful story about her mother, my father's sister, my Titi Margie, who was 5 years old and she didn't speak English. Because even though my parents and most of their siblings were born here, their first language was Spanish. But when they started going to school in New York, they were forced to learn English. And in those days, you know, corporal punishment was, you know, big. And my Titi Margie was trying to raise her hand. She had to go to the bathroom, but she didn't know how to say it in English. And she was just saying it in Spanish. And the teacher refused to let her. It's like, no, English only, English only. And my poor Titi Margie ended up peeing right there her pants and on the floor and, you know, was humiliated. And that was one of the reasons why she then learned to speak English. And I think also a good part of her life, you know, felt the pressure of assimilation, you know, when you're taught those kinds of things at an early age. And my parents, you know, faced a lot of discrimination as their parents did when they were growing up. My mother comes from a family of 9, my father from a family of 7. Their mothers and fathers, again, spoke very little English, but even when they did speak English, they spoke it with a thick accent. They faced a lot of discrimination. So all of that, I think, contributed to my parents, particularly my mother, putting pressure on me to speak perfect English. And I mean, you know, she would really pinch a fit if I also didn't have excellent grammar skills and spelling, and, you know, if I didn't dot my I's, cross my T's, literally. She would, you know, that was drilled into me. I almost became an English major at one point because that had just been drilled into me all my life. Long answer to your very short question, but so yeah, the play I like to explore. I'm proud of my Spanglish, you know. I'm always trying to improve my Spanish, but I have a little phobia, you know. I remember the first time I went to Puerto Rico as an adult in 1993, and the cashier at Walgreens just was speaking to me in Spanish, and I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't have to think about it, and then it just seemed to come out naturally. But when I find myself in situations when I'm like, oh, put on the spot, or I have to, then I freeze up, I panic, I have like all this PTSD around it. It's horrible. But hopefully I'll get over that. Anyway, yes?
I just wanted to comment that I think in your writing and in the presentation as well, I think you really capture the complexity of identity formation. People often just take it for granted. I mean, so well, at least certain you know, I think groups take it so for granted that you know, it's just a choice. You know, it's just you just choose whatever, and it's not that, right? It's, and there's so much and so much tension around it too. That, and I think. Obviously, you don't have to be Latino. You can be an immigrant group from anywhere. They have, you know, really identified with those experiences.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, let's see, we have more time. How much time do we have? 20 minutes?
We have
okay.
About 20 minutes.
Okay. I can read a little more if there are no other questions. Okay, this is a new piece that I'm kind of debating whether or not to put into transplantations. It's a heavy piece, and if I put it in, I'm gonna have to, I think, put in some other stuff to kind of flesh things out. Because of the way transplantations is written now, my mother is a complex character, but I think she comes out, you know, pretty heroic in spots, and my father too. But I think this piece kind of takes a dark turn, and I don't want that to be the total representation of my mother, because I think I understand her so much better now. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us. But so I'll just say that this this piece that I'm about to read deals with my exploration of looking at the cycle of violence that's, and generational violence, that's passed down through the generations. But I'm trying to explore, you know, nobody is born holding a gun. I mean, this was something one of my other mentors said, Barbara Tinney, who was a former director of the New Haven Family Alliance in Connecticut. She said, no one's born holding a gun. They get there. They get there. And I think too often in society, we don't bother to ask, how did they get there? You know, how did they get to the point where they're holding a gun? No baby's born saying, hey, yeah, I want to shoot up a school. There's a series of circumstances that happen, you know, things that happen in that person's life that lead them to choose violence. And I also often wonder if there's not more culpability in our society. If you look at our world, it's a very violent world. You know, Whenever there's a problem, people can't seem to work it out diplomatically, they have to go to war. And I just, you know, I'm a pacifist, so I hate to see war, I hate to see violence. So, again, the person holding the gun who shoots up a school, yes, is definitely culpable. But I also think, let's look at what got that person there. Now, my mother didn't shoot up a school, I just want to put that out there. She wasn't that violent, no. But there's other, anyway, I'm just going to read the piece, and then we can talk about it more, and you'll see. All right. So if I were doing this, as I tried doing it once a few years ago as part of some other piece, there would be sounds of a subway train, because the setting is New York City subway, and I'm sitting on like a subway bench on a platform. And the train sounds would fade as I start to speak. Siéntate, siéntate, siéntate y cállate, coño. I said, sit your ass down. Shut the fuck up! You want me to give you something to cry about? That had become the sound of my morning commute on the 6 train from the South Bronx to downtown Manhattan. The cacophonous chorus, young mothers disciplining their beautiful babies barely big enough to walk or talk. The harder their babies cried, the louder the mothers yelled. Siéntate, siéntate y cállate, coño. You want me to give you something to cry about? That was the sound of my mother. Though she didn't use the F word, and in fact banned it from our house, she did use coño, carajo, shit, and goddamn it, whether she had stubbed her toe or silenced my brother's backtalk with one swoosh of the telephone receiver across his head. That was the sound of mi abuelo, Mommy's father. His fist hitting Mommy's teenaged face for coming home late. His fist clenching every single thing mis abuelos had sacrificed, leaving their familia in Puerto Rico for the Americanized dream, caught between the old ways and the New Rican theme. He would make sure my mother behaved like a young lady. Just like Spain, and then the United States, made Puerto Rico its prized possession, Caribbean obsession, sugarcane accession, behave. At 19, Mommy left home and married my father, the gentlest of men, whose notion of discipline was bound by words uttered in a soft but stern voice. Mommy became the life of every party, every family party. We writhed in laughter as she regaled us with stories about her teenage years and the beatings she got at the hands of mi abuelo. Stories of how she'd skip school and stay out late partying, then come home to mi abuela, who greeted her at the door with a punch. We all laughed so much. It's only now, as I try to block out the sound of my morning commute. Her stories don't seem cute, yet I'm mute. Siéntate, siéntate y cállate, coño. You want me to give you something to cry about? No matter how hard I tried, how hard I shut my eyes, I could not shut out the sounds. My morning commute penetrating my brain, reverberating louder than the sounds of the train itself, banging, clanging, smashing, gnashing along the tracks. I could not stop the runaway train of my thoughts. What's gonna happen to these babies? Who will they turn out to be? Abuser or abused? Gangbanger, mass shooter, or just another stranger raging on the street? Innocent smiles reviled, so fears and tears as their mothers frown, shout, jeer, and hit, just as their mothers or fathers did. I never liked the subway. Never liked it one bit, especially the number 6 when we caught it at our stop, Elder Ave, or at my tita's, Castle Hill. Never liked it at all. I thought I was going to fall. It was an elevated train at those stops in the Bronx, and I remember feeling the vibrations on the platform long before the train was in sight, long before I could hear the banging, clanging, smashing, gnashing along the tracks. I felt it, infiltrating my bones, ambushing my sweat glands, terrorizing me from head to toe. I would squeeze my mother's hand, and she would say, "What's the matter? You scared? What are you scared of? The train? That's nothing to be scared of. And she would pull me close to her, shielding me from the train demon. With the body and attitude of a German commandant, she could and would stop a train dead in its tracks. But I couldn't stop trembling. I couldn't even look at the train. I had to wrap my arms around her and bury my face in her hips. Only when it rattled to a stop could I open my eyes, and even then, with quivering lips, I was afraid to move, imagining my tiny feet missing the step and falling through the abyss between the platform and the train door. Once inside the train, she would pull me even closer, kiss the top of my head, and tell me, "You got nothing to be scared of." And I believed her. Until she got mad at something or someone or me. "But Ma, siéntate y cállate, coño. You want me to give you something to cry about?" I wasn't back-talking like my brother. I just wanted to tell her why I called him a jerk-off. I thought I had good reason. He provoked me by sadistically holding a fork to my throat when she wasn't looking. "But Ma," I said, "cállate, coño." No kiss on the head as she punctuated the coño with a yank of my very long braid. I didn't get the chance to tell my side of the story. In Mommy's book, there were never two sides to any story, only Mommy's side. "Siéntate, siéntate, cállate, coño. You want me to give you something to cry about?" Even though I was, for the most part, a well-behaved kid, there were a lot of yanked braids and threats of the strap. One of my father's old belts that Mommy occasionally held up. That strap snapped me into obedience. That strap snapped like a solo in the cacophonous chorus of young mothers disciplining their beautiful babies barely big enough to walk or talk. But what if, when I heard, "Siéntate, siéntate y cállate, coño, you want me to give you something to cry about," what if I stood up and said, "Stop! Do you know what you're doing to your kid?" There's nothing cute in my morning commute when a child's smiles turn to wails in a heartbeat. But what if doesn't exist? It never did when I was a kid. So I'm mute, afraid of speaking my truth to any one of these young mothers who could easily wipe the floor with me. In my early 30s, I worked as a teaching artist in some of the best and worst schools in all the 5 boroughs of New York City. I didn't pay much attention to my morning commute then. I was usually sleeping or grooving to the tunes on my Walkman. But I found myself paying attention to the schools. I remember getting angry at the system that ignored the brilliant, creative minds of young people, mislabeling them special ed because they could not pay attention or sit still for a teacher who didn't realize she may have let the next Langston Hughes, Julia de Burgos, Ella Fitzgerald, or Van Gogh slip through the cracks. I remember getting angry, but not doing more than encouraging the young people to write, paint, or draw. I did not speak about what I saw to the principal or board of ed. I only vented to my friends. I remember many years later leaving New York for a different kind of commute, just me and my car, driving through hills and farms and woods full of beautiful trees. The sounds of nature and NPR replaced "Siéntate, siéntate, cállate, coño," and the faces of those beautiful babies began to fade into the bucolic scene. I left New York to direct an after-school arts program in Connecticut. But I found myself still getting angry at the system, as well as a new set of parents who yelled, "Siéntate, siéntate y cállate, coño. You want me to give you something to cry about?" And who, when tired of yelling or just plain tired of being tired from working 3 jobs and still not having enough to pay their way out of the one room for 3 people with the leaking ceilings and lead-painted walls, listened to the doctors prescribing Ritalin for their 9-year-old Frida Kahlos and Alvin Ailey's. I wanted to yell back, "Do you know what you're doing to your kid?" I wanted to, but I didn't. Instead, I sat down, shut up, and gave myself something to cry about. Thank you. So I think I'll end it there. It's kind of a down, I'm sorry, it's a downer, but the play ends hopefully. I will say that. It's very hopefully. And the parents are heroic. They do the right thing ultimately. Anyway, yeah, so thoughts, questions, comments, concerns?
So do you have a plan to show it again with these new parts added?
Well, you know, it's so interesting. I haven't been working on this until Mehmet contacted me a couple months back. Now it's kind of rejuvenated my interest in the piece. I've been working on something else. I'm very upset that so many people still don't understand the real history of Puerto Rico. So I've been working on a play that tries to set the record straight, so to speak, and also I've been working on a play about Antonia Pantoja, who was a wonderful activist and educator, and kind of meshing the two plays and exploring that. And so the past couple of years I've been doing more of that work, but I do love transplantations, and being here today, I want to thank you so much for this opportunity, because now you're making me see that maybe I should go back to it. And, yeah. So I'm sorry, the short answer is no, I don't have any plans to perform it soon, but maybe I'll create an opportunity for myself next year.
You have to let us know, of course.
Yeah, sure. And maybe I'll try to do it in New York. I mean, I live in New Haven, Connecticut, but I teach at SUNY Purchase, and I go to the city an awful lot of times. So.
Are you surprised that you find yourself in Connecticut after hating it?
Yes, and I actually made that a part of my wedding vows, because the only reason I moved back to Connecticut was because I fell in love with my childhood friend. I can say my wife and I, I've known her all her life. I'm about 7.5 years older than she is. But when we moved to New Milford, her mom was pregnant with her. And they were the only African American family on the block. We were the only Puerto Ricans. So our parents really bonded. Our mothers in particular became best friends. So Amy, that's my wife, she and I didn't get together until much later in life. But she was living in Connecticut, in the New Haven area, Branford, Connecticut, when we started rekindling our friendship, and then it led into a romance. So that was like 2005, and I was living in the Bronx in Hunts Point. And I was ready to leave New York, but I wasn't ready to come back to Connecticut. I really wasn't. I wanted to go to like New Mexico. Actually, I wanted to go to Puerto Rico. I came very close to moving there. It didn't work out. Then I was thinking New Mexico or Arizona, because I love warm weather. I love the desert. I love, but I also love the ocean. So anyway, Amy came along and I was like, wow, So I applied for a job in Connecticut, and then I got it, and then I moved there in 2006. So it was another culture shock for me. I'm like, coño, all this work I just did on myself, 20 years. And now I'm like back here. What the hell? So, yeah, but we got married in 2007, and I wrote it into my vows. Like, I said I would never live in this godforsaken state. I must be in love. But, yeah, totally. But no, I have to say, I still struggle with some of the issues I did as a child. When I come upon certain people in Connecticut, but we live in New Haven, which is a pretty happening city, and we have a nice little house near the beach, near Long Island Sound. I'm really grateful for that. I love our house. We've made it a home. I don't want to live there the rest of my life. I'm still trying to convince her to move. I'm still trying to convince Amy to move to Puerto Rico. Maybe when we retire. I know people are like, you're crazy, but I want to be part of the solution, So anyway, yes.
Do you think you're just discovery path would have been easier if you had stayed in the Bronx.
But then I would have never met Amy.
Yeah. See, that's the
So,
thing.
you
I
know,
mean,
so
it's
that's the
like,
thing. It's like,
it's a godforsaken.
yeah. I mean, if you asked me that question 20 years ago, I would have said, yes, I should have stayed in the Bronx. Would have had a different life. I would have gone to LaGuardia, you know, School of Performing Arts, the big high school, you know. Because the high school I went to, they did one play in 3 years, and it was a musical. And guess what? I can't sing. So, you know, and they did Bye Bye Birdie. I'm like, come on, man. No, really. That's to give you a sense of where I was. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, for years I would say we should have stayed in the Bronx. But no, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And I met Amy and her incredible family, you know, and our mothers. When I think of the friendship they had, oh my God, they were role models for us in so many ways. They really just had such a deep love and respect for each other and taught me the beauty, the power, the strength of women, of womanhood and of female friendships, you know. So it all worked out the way it needed to, you know.
Because we see students up here that come out, their parents
Yeah.
bring them up here for reasons, and the kids
Yeah.
don't see that
Right.
reasons, and it's hard.
It's hard. It is hard. And I tell you, I fought it for a long time. I really did. But I will tell you a little secret. I do spend a lot of time in the city now because I'm on an awards committee for an off-Broadway awards, and so I have to see like 2-3 shows a week. And I'm traveling all over the city, and I get a little panicky, like I feel closed in. I'm like, yo, where's the sunlight? You know, and there's a skyscraper where the sky should be, you know, and it freaks me out because in Connecticut, I have a little backyard. I walk my dog to the beach every day, you know. I'm like, I love nature. I've always loved nature, but I think, you know, that also was instilled in me by living in New Milford because there was so much nature back then. One of my favorite things to do when I was depressed as a kid, I would go out to this field called Gary Camp's Field, this huge hill, and it just opened up to this big field, and there were trees in the distance. And even on dark, cold days, I would lie down on the brown ground, because this is like the fall, early winter, no grass, it's just all dead, and the trees are bare. But I would find beauty in just lying on that field and staring up into the sky and looking at the beautiful contours of the sky and the colors, the blue-gray against the brown ground. I would write poetry, you know, and that was my sanctuary. So nature became my respite, my sanctuary. And yeah, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I don't think you could pay me any amount of money to live back in New York City now. It's just too much. It's too crowded, and I feel too anxious. Too many buildings, too many cars, and I'm used to open space now. And even where I live, the houses are very close together. I don't even like that. I'm like, I wish we had 5 acres, man. I just want 5 acres. I want my space. You know, I've become like that in my old age. I don't know. That's the truth, though. You're the only people I've said that to outside of my family.
These are the realizations when you turn 60.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's like, oh shit, I'm 60, I'm from Connecticut.
Yeah. No, but if anybody asks me where I'm from, I probably say the Bronx, because that's where I was born, and those first 7 years of my life were very formidable. That's my roots, man. You can't take that away from me. Parkchester, that's the hospital's gone. Where I was born, they tore that down long ago, but that's where I was born, in Parkchester, and we lived in Soundview. And I have wonderful memories because it was such a close-knit neighborhood, and our next-door neighbors were our family. We didn't lock our doors. We did not lock our doors. We walked into each other's apartments. You know, I called our next-door neighbor Titi Nancy and Uncle Nelson. That's how we were one big familia, you know. So I miss that. I miss that sense of community and family. Don't have that not quite in where I'm living now.